Did you take this challenge too, Bubba's? Who's here? Who's here? Come here. Hey, come here. JJ, nobody's here. Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me back on my channel today. I am really excited because we are in the midst of a quarantine. The quarantine is not the reason why I'm excited. It's more of something that I decided to do as a result of the quarantine, and that was to take the A Beautiful Mess weekday, weekend eating lifestyle challenge. I decided to try and adopt the A Beautiful Mess weekday, weekend eating lifestyle. Now, if you haven't heard of the A Beautiful Mess blog before, it is a lifestyle blog that features a variety of different DIY recipes, hair tutorials, projects, just so much stuff, and I'll make sure to put a link in the description so that way you can check them out. I've been following them for about 10 years, and of course, 3 years ago when they came out with this cookbook, I had to buy it. Now, I fall into a similar Pinterest hole where I buy tons of cookbooks and then I never use them. So now that we're in quarantine, I decided to dust them off the shelves, and this was the one that I decided to try first. What exactly is the weekday, weekend eating lifestyle? The lifestyle itself is quite simple. Basically, for 5 days out of the week, the weekday, there are 5 simple rules that you follow, and then every other day during the week, the weekend, there are no rules. I thought this was something that was going to be very simple. I was incredibly wrong. Now, the rules themselves are also pretty simple. You want to make sure you eat a variety of foods, have no refined or artificial sweeteners and sugars, no white flour or white rice, have no dairy, and then no alcohol. It's not really a diet, so to speak. It's more about promoting a healthier eating style, which is something that I definitely need. And there's a lot more information in the book, and it goes into the rules in a lot more detail. So I'll make sure to leave a link on where you can purchase the book if this is something that you're interested in doing as well. I knew that there was one rule that was gonna be a piece of cake, and that was no dairy, because I'm lactose intolerant. So I don't eat dairy anyway. I wasn't too worried about no artificial sugars and white flour. I tend to go more whole grain. I was really excited to try and eat a variety of foods. However, I knew that no alcohol might be a little bit of a challenge. Not because I'm a really big drinker, but just due to being in quarantine, there's been an increased number of happy hours, virtual happy hours, during the week. So I usually partake in a beverage of 2 during that time. So I was gonna have to do a little bit of research on, not really research, but do a little bit of creative thinking on what I could drink instead of an alcoholic beverage. The other thing too is I'm a huge snacker, and I'm pretty sure the majority of my snacks do not fall into one of those 5 rules. So I was gonna have to do a little bit more research on what snacks would be appropriate for me that would follow those rules to eat during the weekday. The way that I approached this was in a couple of different stages. The first stage was the planning stage, and this is something that usually I do when it comes to my meals anyway. So I plan out the meals that I'm gonna eat each day of the week, and then I make one giant grocery list of everything that I need that is in the recipes that I'm going to be cooking. Now, why do I do this? Because I have a horrible memory and I can't remember every single ingredient that's in my pantry. I also have a lot of meats frozen, and to remember what meats are in my freezer would be a nightmare. So I make a list of everything that I need to cook for that week, and then I go over into my pantry and cross out everything that I have. This does take a little bit of time, and if anybody has a better way to do this or a better way to remember what's in their pantry, please make sure you leave a comment, because your girl could use some help. After I have my grocery list, that is then when I get to go grocery shopping. I am not a huge fan of going into grocery stores. I am not a huge fan of going into grocery stores, and this was way before the pandemic happened. I just find it to be a waste of time. So I've actually been using curbside pickup for over a year or so. And once the shelter-in-place orders happen, as I'm sure many of you are experiencing, a lot of people shifted to this option. And there's a couple of tips that I've picked up over the last month of this happening. Make sure you give yourself enough time, because a lot of people are going in and using, or not really going in, a lot of people are using curbside pickup. Before all the shelter in place, I used to be able to make my grocery list, order my groceries, and if I woke up early enough to order my groceries, I could pick them up later that day. Now I've noticed it's been taking about 4 to 5 days before I'm able to pick up my groceries once I order them. So make sure you're planning well ahead of time and give yourself enough time, and know that there are going to be a little delay when it comes to doing a curbside pickup if that's the option you're going to use. The next one is don't be afraid of grocery delivery. A lot of people looked at me like I was crazy when I told them that I swore by curbside pickup up and down. They just had real hesitations about people picking out their produce or picking out their meat, which I totally understand. However, one of the things that I was very hesitant about doing was grocery pickup. I'm not a huge fan of people delivering food to me in general. I know during this quarantine time, it's grown on me a little bit. Still not saying I'm on board with it, but it's grown on me a little bit. So one of the things I decided to try was, why not get my groceries delivered? It is a slightly quicker option, at least from what I've noticed. I took about 4 or 5 days to do a curbside pickup, like I said. However, when I did my grocery delivery, it was only a 2-day waiting period. So that might be something that you would want to look into. It does require a little bit more human interaction just because you have the person bringing you your groceries. But the person who delivered mine took all the necessary precautions, and we definitely limited human contact as much as we can. So it might be something looking worthwhile in your area, and seeing if it's a little bit quicker than curbside. And then finally, be prepared to shop in multiple locations. I know that a lot of the times you are able to get all the ingredients that you want. However, if you're gonna try some of the ingredients that are in this book, there are some that I have never even heard of, let alone used, and were a little bit difficult to find. I was able to find them, but like I said, I did have to go to multiple locations. So just be prepared, especially like I said, if you're gonna be using this cookbook, that you might have to shop at multiple grocery stores to try and find some of the ingredients that are in the recipes in here. After I got all of my groceries, I set some time aside to prep what I needed to do for the rest of the week. Now, I did set aside a lot of time for prep because I did a lot of prepping, and I mean a lot of prepping. I think I spent about 6 hours prepping things like bread that I was gonna use for the week and cutting up vegetables so I didn't have to do it when I was going to cook that day, and anything that needed to be frozen during the week. I think that I spent about 6 hours doing all my prep one day, which probably was a little excessive, but future gen definitely thanked past gen for doing that. This is when I got to try my first recipe, and that was the whole wheat English muffins that is featured in the book. And Paul Hollywood would be so disappointed in me. They looked not so great. However, they tasted really good and they froze really well, and I used them the rest of the week and even like a week later. So while they didn't look good, they still tasted very good. But the point I'm trying to make is doing a lot of prep work ahead of time is just gonna save you time the rest of the week. So make sure that you're either doing some prepping or leaving some time ahead to do prep, or don't. Do whatever you want. I am just a horrible cook in general, and I thought prepping was gonna make things easier, and it didn't. Now I'm sure what everybody wants to know, how exactly did it go? Well, I'm pretty sure that I don't know if anybody wants to know it, but it did not go very well for me. And I don't blame the rules or the lifestyle or anything like that. I think that it's great. I blame myself and my horrible cooking skills, because while a lot of the things that I cooked, just like the English muffins, tasted really good, they didn't look exactly or maybe even all like the picture. And this is one of my pet peeves. I absolutely love cookbooks. You know, there's tons that are out there that have great recipes. However, one of the things that really bothers me is when cookbooks don't have pictures next to the recipes. How am I supposed to know how well I did if I can't see what I'm cooking and what it's supposed to look like? I like to think of myself as a very creative person, but not when it comes to cooking. So the only way that I can judge whether or not a recipe was successful is if what I made looks like the picture. And if I don't have a picture, I don't know if it's supposed to come out this way. Maybe that's just me. If you feel the same, like this video, leave a comment, do whatever. That was my pet peeve, that was my soapbox. I'm gonna step off of it and continue on. First recipe I did from the cookbook was the barbecue sweet potato burgers. Now the recipe calls for homemade barbecue sauce. However, I took the easy way out and I used store-bought barbecue sauce, which doesn't follow one of the rules because it has refined sugars in it. However, baby steps, I guess. It's a really simple, easy recipe, and one of the best parts I like about it is that you can freeze the patties after you make them. Pretty sure I still have a couple in my freezer right now, but the first ingredient that I had never heard of before when I was making my grocery list was TVP, and that's textured vegetable protein. So it is a very versatile ingredient that you can use in when you're making veggie burgers, and you can find it at your local grocery store. Overall, I would give Jen's success in making this recipe a 5 out of 5 because I didn't have any major fails when I was making it. Next recipe I tried out of the book was the one we already talked about, and that was the whole wheat English muffins. Again, they tasted really good. They froze well. When I pulled them out of the freezer, even like a week later, when I toasted them, they were great. The problem is, they didn't look exactly like the picture. I don't know what happened. I just have zero baking skills, I guess. They looked good, just didn't look like the picture. It was a really easy recipe to follow. However, I guess bread is just always gonna get the better of me. One of these days I will conquer bread, but apparently that week was not the week for me to make bread. So I would give my success of making this recipe a 3 out of 5. The next recipe I tried was the dark chocolate peanut butter smoothie bowl, and oh my gosh, that was so good. It was so simple to make, so easy. It does make quite a bit. So what I did was put some in a container and threw it in the freezer, and I actually ate it for dinner. I ate it for dessert later. Actually, I probably did eat it for dinner. I ate it for dessert later that week. It was so simple, it was so good, there was very minimal ingredients. Even I couldn't mess it up. So I'm gonna give myself a 5 out of 10 for the success in making this. I would definitely make it again. The next recipe was the cinnamon almond butter toast. And you could maybe tell by the tone of my voice that this did not go well. I think that this was probably the worst havoc or worst thing that I made all week. It seems like it's gonna be really simple, but I'll tell you what, if you don't have a food processor, don't try it. Or try it. I don't care. But I can tell you I don't have a food processor, and the main point of making almond butter, well, cinnamon almond butter, is to blend all of the things together, and it just didn't come out really well. However, there was one new ingredient that was in this recipe that I had never heard of before, and that was safflower oil. I'm still not even quite sure what that is. I was able to find it at my local grocery store. Didn't think there was gonna be this much, and you can see how much I actually used. But apparently it's made from safflower? I don't know. JJ, do you know what this is? Yeah, I don't know what it is either. It smells good though, right? So apparently you can use this instead of cooking oil or vegetable oil. Maybe it's just another vegetable. I would think that it's a flour. Safflower oil, found at your local grocery store, and Jen's probably pronouncing it wrong. Safflower oil or safflower oil, oregano, however it's pronounced, was one of the other ingredients that I had to use for the first time. Again, I didn't have a food processor, so this recipe was a disaster. I'm gonna give Jen's baking this a 1 out of 5 because it still kind of worked, but I wouldn't recommend using anything but a food processor for it. It did not work in my blender. Get a food processor. Use a food processor, or don't get a food processor. Do whatever you want. But it didn't work for me. Another recipe that I tried was the creamy mashed cauliflower, and mine wasn't so creamy. It looked okay, it tasted really good, but it was more like lumpy mashed potatoes rather than creamy mashed potatoes. It does call for roasted cauliflower, and it's very, very easy to burn cauliflower just because there's so many different, it's hard to get one uniform size when you're cutting cauliflower. So if you're gonna make this one, definitely make sure you keep an eye on the cauliflower when you're roasting it so that it doesn't burn, because that might cause not so great of a taste, trust me, from experience. Again, it didn't look the best. It was easier to make. This was another one that probably should have used a food processor for, but alas, I don't have a food processor, so I made it in the blender, which this one worked out a lot better than the cinnamon almond butter, but still wasn't the best. I give myself making this a 4 out of 5. Again, it looked pretty similar. It tasted really good. That food processor would have been the 5 out of 5 on that one, but I don't have one, so oh well. Overall, I would highly recommend this cookbook. There's lots of really great recipes that I didn't even get to tap into. However, one thing I will let you know is that it is a vegetarian cookbook. A lot of the recipes, though, are really easy to incorporate any protein that you want into them, but at least it's still good to know ahead of time. So if you're interested in finding a good cookbook, especially a good vegetarian cookbook, I would recommend picking up this one. The other thing that was really difficult for me, and not anything to do with the cookbook, is that I'm horrible at keeping a schedule. I usually eat when I'm hungry, and for dinner it's usually not until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, which is not an ideal time to cook because most of the recipes took about 45 minutes to an hour to make, and eating dinner at 9 o'clock at night is probably when I should be getting ready for bed. So if anybody has any advice on trying to keep a consistent schedule when it comes to eating dinner, again, your girl needs some help. Like I said, there was a lot of recipes that I didn't get to try that I'm excited to go back and try. I didn't even tap into the breakfast section or really the dessert section, which are two of my favorite type of food categories. I didn't even tap into those two, so I'm excited to go back and try a lot of the different recipes in there. However, I don't necessarily know if the weekday weekend lifestyle fits for me. I did eat a lot of variety of food. I definitely avoided dairy. I cheated a little bit on sugars. I know I didn't eat any whole wheat or white flour. Whole wheat, you're supposed to eat whole wheat. I didn't eat any white flour or white sugar, and not sticking to no alcohol was not something that I was able to do. So I'm not quite sure if this lifestyle is for me, but I do enjoy the recipes that are in there, and I can't wait to tap into the other ones. If you are interested in purchasing this cookbook or even checking out the A Beautiful Mess blog, I'll make sure to leave, again, links in the description so you can find out where to purchase the cookbook as well as check out their blog and all the different recipes they have. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hope that maybe you decide to try something new when it comes to your cooking, but no, I feel you out there if you're not a great cook, because I am not either. I don't know. I don't have any words. I don't know. I'm not. I tried. My dad would be proud that I tried, but I'm just not a great cook. If you liked the video that you saw, make sure you hit that like button, as well as don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you know when new videos get posted. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.